Hi, this is Alex, and if you love music, well, you've come to the right place because we're all about albums. I have been watching a limited series on Amazon Prime recently, which deals with the rise and fall of a rock band entitled Daisy Jones and the Six. The 10-part miniseries is based on the novel by Taylor Jenkins Reid by the same title as that of the miniseries, Daisy Jones and the Six. There have been several movies in the past dealing with fictitious bands. However, this one is somewhat unique. Here, a full-length album was actually created and recorded as the band performed them on the TV miniseries. In the past, we've had unknown songwriters representing bands such as the Archies doing their big hit Sugar Sugar, which, if you recall, on Ed Sullivan and other shows, they would portray them by the cartoon playing the song. Somewhat more closely to what we're talking about was a movie from the 1980s entitled Eddie and the Cruisers. It is quite a good movie if you haven't seen it. As many of you may recall, the music was actually performed by a real band, John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. However, different to this miniseries, that album only featured a few songs that were performed that made it onto the album. The bulk of the album is still what you would expect from the soundtrack. Other songs that were well known representing the 1960s, or just some background music as instrumentals. Probably coincidental side note is that the production company that did Eddie and the Cruisers was Aurora Productions, and as those of you know, the entitled album that we will be reviewing is entitled Aurora. Before I review the album, I want to point out a few things that were quite interesting to me about the miniseries, and that has to do with what most of you probably noticed as well, the vast similarities to Fleetwood Mac. First of all, the miniseries portrayed two women in the band, one as the lead singer and the other as the keyboardist, very similar to Fleetwood Mac, who had Stevie Nicks as the lead vocalist and Christine McVie as their keyboardist. Many of you may also realize that Fleetwood Mac originally did not have Christine McVie in the band, but actually was added to the band, even though she did contribute behind the scene to some of the music writing of the band. And just like the original miniseries, the Six became the Six after a keyboardist joined the band. Another similarity has to do with what happened to the band in their history. The Six did have some success during the miniseries prior to Daisy Jones joining the band. However, Daisy Jones was the spark that they needed to bring them to national and international stardom, much like Fleetwood Mac. In 1974, even though they had many successful albums, both here in the US and in the UK, they took a hiatus in 1974. Shortly after that, Mick Fleetwood, through mutual friends, heard about both Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks and heard their solo album that they recorded, and this led to them joining the band, and as they say, the rest is history. In the miniseries, the heyday of the band was in 1976 and 1977, much like Fleetwood Mac, with the release of their album Rumors, and in 1977, the album won the Grammy for Best Album. What I find most interesting is how the album came to be. In the miniseries, they portrayed it as a romantic tension between the two lead singers, that is Daisy Jones and Billy Dunn. This is in parallel that was happening in Fleetwood Mac. There was a divorce happening between Christine McVie and John McVie. Also, Mick Fleetwood was divorcing his wife and at the same time having an affair with Stevie Nicks. Obviously, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks also broke up during the early days of Fleetwood Mac. And finally, something that may be a little bit superficial, but nonetheless very obvious to me anyway, was the outfits worn by Daisy Jones in the movie, especially during her recording sessions and the concerts, were very reminiscent of those worn by Stevie Nicks, both when she was with Fleetwood Mac and during her solo career. I'm sure there are other similarities that I have not mentioned that you may have noticed out there while watching the miniseries, and I would love to hear from you and let me know on the comment sections below. The Aurora album, which features 11 songs, were all either written or co-written by Blake Mills. Now, who is Blake Mills? Well, first off, he's a musician. He is a very well-regarded guitarist. He has been a session player. He's had his own solo career and has also toured and recorded with many, many famous rock bands and also other singer-songwriters. Additionally, later in his career, Blake Mills has become a successful producer and has been nominated for a Grammy for his production. Blake Mills received help in writing of the songs by many well-known artists, including Jackson Browne, Phoebe Bridgers, Marcus Mumford from Mumford & Sons, Madison Cunningham, Roger Manning, and additionally Cass McCombs, amongst other musicians. The Aurora album does have a very late 70s blues rock sound, much like Fleetwood Mac, and the artists that help Blake Mills definitely gave that vibe to the music. Getting to the album, the first song is Aurora, and if you listen to Aurora, you will see the great similarity to Fleetwood Mac. First of all, you would hear the harmonizing vocals, very reminiscent of Stevie Nicks with Lindsey Buckingham. Additionally, what you're going to hear is that this song reminds me a lot of the opening song to their White album, also known just as the Fleetwood Mac self-titled album, and that is Monday Morning. The next song is Let Me Down Easy, and I think this song, if no other one in the album, really shows the vocal interaction here between the two lead singers, very, very reminiscent of how Stevie Nicks would sing, as well as the accompaniment typically by Lindsey Buckingham. The next song on the album is Kill Till You Try, and again, very similar to Fleetwood Mac style. I don't have any other insights into that song. The next song was entitled Two Against Three, and I think this one reminds me a lot of the song Landslide, with the vocals and the accompanying acoustic guitar. I think if you listen to both of the songs back to back, I think you'll get what I mean. The next song up is Look at Us Now, and in parentheses, Honeycomb, and this song appears several times during the miniseries, and it is quite a strong song, I think. Now this one, again, you're really going to hear where the artist singing on this album sounds very much like Stevie Nicks would. And the other thing I notice is that the ending of the song, the guitar riff, is very similar to Jackson Browne's song Running on Empty, as well as the Fleetwood Mac song Go Your Own Way. Take a listen to those two songs and see if you agree with me on that one. I think that they're pretty dead on. Side 2 of the album starts with a very strong song, maybe the best on the album, called Regret Me. And this one has very powerful vocals and a very, very similar guitar riff that you would hear in the 1970s, not only with Fleetwood Mac, but with other bands. I think they made damn sure that the guitar did not have too much of a modern sound, but really kept to that nostalgic 70s rock sound. Next song on the album is You Were Gone, and this song is a dead ringer. This song could have appeared on their White Album, and you would have sworn this was another Fleetwood Mac song, especially with the vocal mix. It's a nice song, but really could be interchangeable with a number of the songs on the Fleetwood Mac album. The next song on the album is called More Fun to Miss. Now this one utilizes fuzz guitar, and it was really heavy blues rocker. And when you hear this song, you'd say, no way, this isn't Fleetwood Mac at all. And you might be right if you don't go all the way back to their history. Remember, Fleetwood Mac started out as a pure blues band, and in that band was Peter Green, and they really did sound like a classic blues band from the late 60s, and it had heavy fuzz rock guitar. And I think that song could easily fit in on the earliest of the Fleetwood Mac albums. The next song is Please, and this song, I don't know, this one's just hit me right away, and I said, Broadway. I can hear this song in a Broadway musical, especially for those of you who've seen either Spring Awakening and the more popular Rent. I think this song could have appeared on the soundtrack of either of those two Broadway productions. The penultimate song is entitled The River, and this is a good blues rocker, and especially in the chorus, you can really hear the vocal style very similar to that of Stevie Nicks. The final song on the album is entitled No Words. And I think this song, more than any other on the album, if you listen to the acoustic guitar on this track, I think this one is very similar to the guitar style picking of Lindsey Buckingham. So you're probably asking, what do I think? Well, I think this is a really nice 70s sounding album. And if I did hear this album back in the 1970s, I would have liked it a lot. I probably would have bought the album, and I would be comparing them to Fleetwood Mac and waiting for their second release eagerly so that I can purchase that one as well. However, yes, there was a however coming. And that is that the album, although nostalgic and fun, is somewhat dated. I do think musically it is better than I thought it would be, and I would give this overall 3.5 out of 5 stars. So in summary, I would say this is a very good 70s album, but not a great one. So let me know on the comments section below what you guys think of the Aurora album. And now for last video's unknown albums. The first unknown album, most of you who did respond knew this one. This is OK Computer, and this is by Radiohead. This is released on the EMI label, and this was released in 1997. This is the third studio album by Radiohead, and this album was recorded mostly live. That is, all the musicians played at the same time while this album was recorded. Now, the label did not think this album would sell very well, and of course they were dead wrong. This album was the #1 album in the UK, and it did post number 21 on the US charts. This album went 5 times platinum in the UK and has sold nearly 8 million copies worldwide. And as a little side note, I remember seeing Radiohead, and this was when they just first appeared, and they were opening for then one of the big rock bands in the world, REM. So I got a little glimpse of early Radiohead, and they were different. I didn't appreciate them right away, but as their albums matured, I started to like Radiohead more and more. And finally, this album won the Grammy Award in 1998 for the Best Alternative Album of the Year. The second unknown album, I was a little bit surprised. Some of you out there asked me what it was. They weren't really sure. And this was the big new release by Taylor Swift entitled Midnights from 2022. Now, this album did have, I believe, 4 different album covers, so maybe I can forgive some of you out there, but I thought this was a more easy one. However, I guess easy is in the eyes of the beholder. This is Taylor's 10th studio album, and it contains 13 songs, and each of the songs represents some of her thoughts that she had after a sleepless night, and thus the title Midnights. And probably most interesting is that the album Midnights was the most streamed album in 2022 on Spotify, which is no great surprise. However, this is the most streamed album of all time on Spotify, and this breaks Taylor Swift's previous records that she held with her self re-release of Red and also her folklore albums. And now for this video's unknown albums. The first unknown album. Great, hope you got that one. The second unknown album. Great, hope you got that one too. If you think you know the answers, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll let you know how you did. As always, this is Alex with All About Albums. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. And remember, keep them spinning.